Imagine the greatest empire on earth, Rome, proud of never bowing to anyone. Its legions marched like war machines, destroying entire nations with relentless discipline. But what if I told you there was a moment when this invincible empire trembled before an African people? On the banks of the Nile, where the desert meets life, a kingdom rose that not only resisted but dared to strike back. The kingdom of Kush, a land of feared archers, of queens who commanded armies, of warriors who knew every curve of the river and every shadow of the desert. And against all odds, they faced Rome head-on. The question is, how did a seemingly smaller kingdom manage to humiliate the power that ruled the world? If this revelation already surprised you, imagine what's still to come. Hidden stories like this show that the truth is far more intense than history books reveal. So before we continue this epic journey, hit like and subscribe to the channel. That way, you strengthen our mission of bringing to light the secrets time tried to erase. Don't miss the next chapters, because what Rome faced against Kush was only the beginning. By the end of the 1st century BC, Rome was at the height of its rise. Egypt, once the kingdom of the pharaohs, had become a Roman province after the fall of Cleopatra and Mark Antony. For the Romans, controlling the Nile meant much more than prestige. It meant access to wealth, food, and trade routes that would sustain the imperial machine. But ambition did not stop in Alexandria. Rome's gaze turned further south to fertile lands, mines, and secret trade routes hidden beyond the Nile's cataracts. Only one obstacle stood in their way: the powerful kingdom of Kush, heir to ancient Nubia, which had never accepted being just a spectator of Roman greatness. The clash was inevitable. The question was, did Rome truly know the enemy it was about to face? The kingdom of Kush flourished in Meroe, a city marked by the sound of iron being forged and the golden glow of its temples. Its kings and queens, many of them powerful women called Candaces, were not only rulers, but also war leaders. Kushite society was deeply tied to the Nile. Fishermen, herders, and warriors lived under the protection of gods who blended Egyptian influences with Nubian traditions. But what truly terrified their enemies was the Kushite army. Archers of legendary precision, capable of bringing down men and horses from great distances, formed the heart of their forces. Agile warriors, accustomed to the scorching desert heat, knew how to move in silence, striking quickly and vanishing into the sands. To Rome, which saw itself as invincible, these fighters seemed like a distant detail. But soon they would discover that underestimating them would be a fatal mistake. The clash came quickly. Rome, confident after its conquest of Egypt, began advancing into Nubian territories, imposing tributes and plundering cities that refused to submit. To the Romans, it was just another routine campaign, but to the Kushites, it was an intolerable affront. It was in this context that the legendary figure of Queen Amanirenas arose, the Kandake who would lose an eye in battle, but never her resolve. Bearing the fury of her people and the courage of an entire nation, she rallied warriors from all regions, swearing that Rome would never step onto their land without paying a price in blood. The first clashes already proved it would not be easy. Burned villages, sudden ambushes, and Roman pride wounded. The question that echoed was simple: how far were the Kushites willing to go to defend their freedom? In response to Kushite boldness, Rome sent Gaius Petronius, an experienced general accustomed to imposing discipline and order on the frontiers. He marched along the Nile Valley with about 17,000 men, legionaries, cavalry, and auxiliaries, all certain they would crush the Africans quickly. The advance was marked by roads cut through the desert, improvised fortresses, and the arrogance of those who believed they faced a lesser enemy. The legions advanced like a wall of iron, standards raised, drums echoing, and a near-blind confidence in Rome's destiny. For them, victory was only a matter of time. But what Petronius did not know was that the land that seemed to favor Rome would soon turn into a trap. The desert, the river, and the fury of the Kushites themselves would conspire against the empire. The march was not just military, it was the prelude to a clash that would mark history. While the Romans marched heavy and predictable, the Kushites moved like shadows in the desert. Masters of every gorge, every curve of the Nile, they turned the terrain into their deadliest weapon. Their archers, feared throughout the ancient world, struck targets at distances that astonished even the most seasoned legionaries. With every ambush, Roman confidence crumbled further. It was a war of attrition, swift attacks and sudden withdrawals that left the invaders exhausted under the blazing sun. To make matters worse, Kushite warriors knew exactly where to cut off water and food supplies, forcing the Romans to fight, hungry and thirsty. Rome now faced an enemy that would not be trapped in open battle, that vanished into the desert only to reappear at the most unexpected moment. The empire discovered little by little that this would not be an easy victory. Direct confrontation was inevitable. When the Roman legions reached Aswan, they believed they would consolidate their supremacy there. But the Kushites turned the city into a stage of fierce resistance. Archers launched arrows that pierced through shields, horses were struck down before reaching the walls, and ambushes emerged from every alley. Within days, the city was consumed by chaos. Fire devoured homes, screams echoed among the stones, and blood stained the Nile. Rome, accustomed to swift victories, found itself trapped in a slow, unpredictable, and brutal war. With every loss, arrogance gave way to doubt. The enemy that was supposed to be easily subdued revealed a ferocity that reminded legionaries that even the greatest empire could bleed. And the question that haunted Petronius and his men was, if they suffered so much in Aswan, what would happen if they tried to advance even further south? The Kushite response was not only military, it was psychological. After resisting Rome's advances, Amanirenas' warriors counterattacked, carrying the war beyond their borders. Roman cities in southern Egypt were sacked, colonies destroyed, and symbols of imperial power desecrated. The most striking episode came when the Kushites cut off the head of a colossal statue of Emperor Augustus and carried it as a trophy to Meroe. There, they buried it beneath the steps of a temple, so that every worshipper who entered would symbolically tread upon Rome. This act echoed like a roar in the heart of the empire. The African people had not only resisted, but dared to humiliate the most powerful man in the world. It was more than battlefield victory. It was a declaration of independence and dignity. For the first time in ages, Rome was forced to retreat. Defeated in pride and worn down in battle, Rome had no choice but to negotiate. Gaius Petronius, who had set out to subjugate the Kushites, now found himself compelled to sit at the table. The treaty that emerged was one of the most surprising in Roman history. Borders were redrawn, tributes imposed by Rome were cancelled, and the kingdom of Kush retained full independence. More than that, the agreement established advantageous trade relations for both sides, turning former enemies into cautious partners. For Rome, accepting such terms was almost a humiliation. For Kush, it was the crowning of their courage. Few peoples could boast of forcing the mightiest empire on earth to back down without demanding submission. The victory of Amanirenas and her people echoed as a reminder. Legions did not always determine the fate of nations. The story of the war between Rome and Kush is not just a forgotten chapter of antiquity. It is an eternal testament of resistance. While many people succumbed to the weight of the legions, the Kushites proved that courage, strategy, and unity could overcome even the world's most feared empire. Queen Amanirenas entered memory as a symbol of leadership and bravery, reminding us that it is not the size of the army that defines victory, but the determination of a people to defend their freedom. This clash left a deep mark. Rome learned that not everything could be conquered by the sword, and Kush showed the world that dignity is not negotiable, and the question that crosses the centuries remains: if an African kingdom was able to make Rome retreat, how many other stories of resistance remain hidden beneath the sands of time? The victory of Kush against Rome was not just a military episode, it was a milestone of resistance, courage, and identity. While the most powerful empire on earth believed it could subjugate any people, it found on the banks of the Nile a nation that refused to kneel. Amanirenas and her warriors proved that true greatness does not lie in the number of soldiers or the weight of weapons, but in the determination to defend freedom. This forgotten story still echoes today as a reminder: even before giants, it is possible to win when one fights with purpose. Rome may have dominated kingdoms, but it never erased the legacy of Kush. And perhaps the greatest lesson is this: the strength of a people does not lie in their wealth or their territory, but in the courage never to be dominated. Just as the kingdom of Kush did not keep its courage only for itself, but transformed history by challenging Rome, I too want to share with you these stories that change how we see the past. If this content has already added something to your life, give back with a like and by subscribing to the channel. This simple gesture helps us continue to reveal hidden secrets that can transform your view of history and the world. Together, we will keep alive the voices that dared to defy the possible.